You're listening to MCS Live, the best of Lowell sports and beyond on millcitysports.com.
Welcome to MCS Live, our MMA special. I am Justin Soderberg, and joined by Greg Celona, my co-host, and actually we have Mike McMahon in the house tonight. This is our first episode back from our debut episode. We talked about a bunch of sports, but today we're going to talk about hockey. Mixed martial arts. We talked about hockey most of the time last time. We have, Greg's obviously been here before. Greg is from Mill City Sports, works for UMass Lowell as well. And Mike actually runs the Mack Report, which is Merrimack College hockey stuff and other Merrimack sports, as well as he covers mixed martial arts for the Eagle Tribune newspaper. And you still with Yahoo?
A little bit.
Okay.
Sort of everywhere and anywhere, whoever will take me.
Because it's such a great sport, and it's an upcoming sport that not a lot of people know about, it's growing, but multiple outlets is nice to have because there's a lot of good people out there covering the sport. It's just growing, and people want to know about it.
Yeah, I started covering, the first event I covered was back in 2006, when I first started with the Tribune. And to see just locally, too, where it's come from 2006 to now, it's like night and day. Mm-hmm. Some of these shows, some of these first shows I covered, you wondered if it was even legal.
It probably wasn't.
The state of some of these buildings and what some of the venues look like. And, you go to some of these events now locally, and obviously UFC is on another level, mm-hmm. But even a local show, it's night and day compared to what it was.
I mean, back in 2006, if you would have thought about it, like, I sent you an email this week, and I said these are the local shows that are coming up, and we'll talk about those a little later, but there was like 10 shows. Yeah. And just to be in New England, those 10 shows, and that's just New England. I mean, there's shows happening all over the world, Brazil, China, Philippines. I mean, we were just looking up earlier before you got here, the Tim Sylvia, former UFC heavyweight from Maine, where I'm from. And he fought over in the Philippines, but he's fought all over the country, and it's or over the world, and it's just unbelievable to see the growth. It's Dana White always is the fastest growing sport. It's kind of hard to equate that to basketball, football, and things like that because those are such old sports that we weren't around during their inception. But it's a great sport, and we love it, and that's why I wanted to do a special. And you and I'll be going up for Mill City Sports, and you'll be going up to Maine for the Eagle Tribune, probably, right?
Among others.
Okay.
Definitely them right now, and then, again, we'll see who else.
Because, Dana White wanted a card in Maine, and, he got his card, and probably, as he said the other day to the Bangor Daily News, probably his first and only card, but there in Bangor. But it's going to be fun, and I know we'll be there, and we're going to cover it. We're going to get into talking about all the fight night. We'll do some previews and predictions, different things about the thing, but let's take a listen to what it's going to be like.
A massive UFC event is coming. Live. Ryan Bader will be out to showcase the skills that took him all the way in Season 8 of The Ultimate Fighter. But he'll need to bring his A game against Ovince Prue, whose unorthodox style has bamboozled his last 6 opponents.
So that's, it's going to be Ryan Bader and Ovince St. Preux as the main event. Number 8, Ryan Bader. Number 10, Ovince St. Preux. Both of them are, working their way back, or at least Bader's working his way back to title contention, where he was up there. He fought John Jones. I don't believe that was a title fight, though. That was before John Jones.
I think it was right before.
Yeah, it was
that may have been his last fight.
Was it a title eliminator fight?
It may have been, yeah.
But so that's going to be a great fight. So let's have Greg talk about the preliminary cards and give a little bit of who's fighting and what's going to happen there.
Yeah, so for the preliminary cards, we're going to have the opening fight will be Nolan Tickman versus Frankie Sands. Then we'll have Tom Kong Watson versus Sam Smilin Alvey. And then we have a women's fight on the on the bill for the preliminary fights. We'll have number 4, Sarah McMahon versus Lauren Murphy, which should be a really fun one to watch. And then we'll also have number 6, Yusir Formiga versus number 9, Zach Makovsky.
And then on the main card, that's on Fox Sports 2, and that will be starting at 8 o'clock for those who get Fox Sports 2. I have the lovely and wonderful Comcast here in Lowell, so I don't get Fox Sports 2, so I'm not going to be there.
Neither do I.
I don't even know.
I remember you had. So
it's one of those mystery channels.
It is. When they switched from the shows being on Fuel TV and Speed TV and all that stuff to Fox, like Fox Sports 1, things like that, I thought, oh, this is going to be great. I'm going to be able to see all the cards. I subscribed to Fight Pass to be able to watch that. And then when they put the preliminary cards on Fox Sports 2, I'm like, well, just making it so I can't watch fights. But on the main card, starting at 10 o'clock, will be on Fox Sports 1, which a lot of people nowadays get if you have cable. Thiago Tavares will be facing Robbie Peralta in a featherweight bout. It's actually Tavares' debut at featherweight. He's normally a lightweight fighter. Sean Jordan will face Jack May at the heavyweight. And Seth Baczynski versus Alan Juban will fight at welterweight. Number 14, Tim Boach will fight Brad Tavares. Tim Boach is actually from Lincolnville, Maine, so that would be fun. Be his probably debut. He fought professionally there before, I'm guessing.
Must have at some point.
Yeah.
I can look up the record. I'm not sure that. But and then number 12, Gray Maynard versus Ross Pearson, and then the main event, Ryan Bader versus Owen St. Preux. Obviously been thinking about this card for a while because it hasn't been UFC in, 2 weeks now because of the cancellation of 176.
Oh, that's true.
So there really hasn't been anything going on. So I've been focusing on this and obviously because I'm going to be there doing previews and fight announcements and things like that. But the fight that fell into place to me and I really can't wait to see is Ross Pearson versus Gray Maynard. I don't know about you guys, but I wanted to see Trujillo, Abel Trujillo. I wanted to see him fight. But this fight to me just sounds like it's going to be a banger. It's going to be great. What do you guys think?
That is definitely going to be an interesting fight, and especially with Ross Pearson coming off of a controversial decision against Diego Sanchez, which I personally definitely think he won that fight at the last.
I think you're biased with that one because you predicted it the other way.
Well, I predicted it, yes, but still, that decision really caught me off guard. I didn't think that Diaz actually won that one, but you got to think that's going to give him some motivation going into this fight. And Gray Maynard is a guy that's known for almost most of his wins are fights that go to distance, so he likes decisions. So it's going to be interesting to see what their different styles. I know Ross Pearson likes he doesn't have a preferred way that he finishes fights that you see very often. He's finished with submissions, knockouts, and one decisions almost all the same. So it'll be interesting to see how they match up against each other. I think that'll be a fun one to watch.
Definitely.
Yeah, I hope Pearson. I think Pearson should make it a more exciting fight. A lot of Gray Maynard fights, at least, since he fought Frankie Edgar, they've just been, for lack of a better term, kind of boring. Mm-hmm. He's a wrestler. I mean, I get that. He wants to go to the ground and, like you said, go the distance and just sort of wrestle his way to some points and get a decision win. But it doesn't make for some very exciting fights. I remember back, I believe it was UFC's first show in Boston. I think Maynard fought Kenny Florian in a title eliminator. And, I mean, so Florian and his hometown fans, there was a good atmosphere in the building when that fight started. And by the end of it, people were just leaving.
I think I remember that one, too, actually.
Yeah, Maynard won. He won all 3 rounds, I think. And it really put people to sleep. And that's just conducive to his style. So I hope that Pearson can make it a little more exciting than what a typical Gray Maynard fight over the last 3-4 years.
And it's hard to say with these people on different levels in the UFC. I mean, you see people lose back-to-back fights or 4 to 5 fights in Dana White. Lorenzo Fertitta, you know what? Find another promotion to fight for because we don't want you. Maynard lost 3 out of 4 fights. So this really is a fight that could say that, even though he's ranked 12th, that's a media ranking. That's not a UFC ranking. It's an official UFC ranking, but it's done by the media. If he loses this fight to Pearson, you could potentially see him no longer with the promotion. I mean, it's hard to say because Maynard is one of those guys that people go, oh, Gray Maynard, I know he fights for the UFC, and he's been there for a while, but
more recognizable name.
He's a recognizable name, but he could be cut if he loses this fight. But Pearson is also winless in his last 2 fights.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
No, he came.
Pearson?
Pearson, yeah, because he lost to Diego.
Well,
he's got a loss to Diego Sanchez, and then the fight before that was a no contest.
So he hasn't won a fight. That's not as big of a deal, but, I mean, it's going to be great. But the fight before that, Tim Boach, It's not going to be Ireland for Conor McGregor. But it's going to be pretty serious because people love, like for people from Maine, there's not a lot of famous people from Maine, right? You have to admit that. There's not like, people in Boston, there's all kinds of famous people who grew up in Boston, actors and athletes, and you just said Kenny Florian's from the area. I mean, there's people from Boston. People from Maine, I grew up in Maine, I know this, get really excited when people from Maine get famous. People still love Tim Sylvia as an MMA fighter. And he hasn't fought in the UFC since he fought, Rodrigo Nogueira for the interim title and lost. That was years ago. And people still love him. He still fights, actually. I think he fights in September at New England Fight, and still is the main event.
Yeah, he just fought in Worcester, I think.
Yeah, but he just fought over in Philippines. It's like he's all over the place. But I think that fight's going to be crazy. I think the crowd's going to go crazy. I think people are just going to be behind him. I think there are people up there who paid the $55, $65, $100 to buy a ticket to see Tim. I mean, that's like they want to see their hometown guy in the arena.
There's going to be something there like that, definitely.
But it's definitely going to be a good fight. And then obviously the women's bout, the only loss on Sarah McMahon's record is against Ronda Rousey, who could probably beat most of the men in the bantamweight division in the UFC. So that, to me, I mean, technically, if you take away the Ronda Rousey fight, you can't obviously take it away because it was there. But these two fighters are going against each other as undefeated people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Lauren Murphy's making her debut in the UFC. So it's going to be an interesting fight. And I never really was. I was one of those. I was a Dana White when he first said no, women will never fight in the UFC.
Oh yeah.
I'm wasn't a big fan for a while there of watching women fight because it's like some of these girls are beautiful. You're like, oh wow, he's gorgeous. And you see him after the fight, you're like, how do you have a boyfriend? How do you have a husband? They don't like. How do they look at you and say you just got beat up by someone?
Yeah.
My wife was a black belt and could beat me.
Well, my wife isn't a black belt. She's so crazy. I mean, she's 4'11". But it's just gonna be a fun thing. Mike, you're gonna be there, and you covered MMA for a while now. Are you surprised with the names that are on this card being in such a small market?
Yes and no. At first I was, but it seems, when Dana White has a soft spot for something, in particular areas, obviously Boston being one, Maine being one, he tries to deliver. And I think he delivered with the first UFC show in Boston with that Edgar Penn event, their rematch. And even last year, I mean, that first Fox Sports 1 call was incredible.
That's true.
And I know it was a big show. They were debuting on that network, but I think it also has something to do with the city. I mean, when he has a soft spot for a place, he delivers around here. It has every time it's been.
It's funny, too, because Fox Sports 1 was big for Dana. You don't think that had anything to play with the fact that it was in Boston?
Oh, I'm sure it did. Yeah.
True.
But, I mean, the card being the names, when I saw the names start to come out, I mean, the first bout I think that was announced was it?
I thought Boach was one of the first ones.
He was the second. I think it was the second fight, but it was like
one of the earlier ones.
It was almost a given that Boach was going to be on the fight. I mean, you might, and Sylvie was like, I think Dana White blocked him on Twitter because he was trying to get on the fight card.
Yeah,
you know what? I almost think he deserves it. I mean, there's only 10 fights on here, right? Make him fight for the 10,000 or 8,000 that some of these rookie fighters fight for, and just put him on there. You get ticket sales. I mean, he's fighting a month later in Maine on a local card at the New England Fights, but it seems kind of funny that he's not there. But when I saw some of these names coming out, when I saw the main event, Beta versus St. Preux, I was like, yes, this is going to be awesome. This is going to be great. And being from Maine and growing up in Bangor, and I have a friend who has a bar across the street from the arena, to see the names, to see the people, and being on Fox Sports 1 and stuff like that. I actually talked to Ben Sprague, who's a city council member. I did an article a couple months ago about how big this is for the city. It's humongous. They've never had a nationally televised event from that arena, I believe. I think this is the first time they've ever had like Fox be there. Like they've probably covered the news stations, probably come up and covered the folk festival or something else. But like, it's just unbelievable. It'll be my first time in the new arena because it's brand new. They just built it. I think it's about a year old. It's just going to be a great, great, great card. I just can't wait. I'm hoping it's going to be a great card. Now that I say that, we're going to go up there. We're going to sit there and it's going to be all decisions. Everything is going to be a decision, and two of them are going to be so controversial that we're going to be like, the only thing that's ever going to come out of Maine is like how bad the card was in Maine. Our ticket sales didn't sell and all this stuff. But I think people in Maine who haven't bought their tickets yet need to, because Dana White said he probably will never come back to Bangor. Not in a bad way. Not like there's been fights in other locations where like I'm never going back to that location.
Oh yeah.
This is probably just because it's not a sustainable thing. It's not. The UFC is a Las Vegas, a Sweden. I mean, how many organizations? I mean, Bellator doesn't even fight overseas. They fight in smaller locations.
They do have a lot in Brazil too.
And Greg and I were just talking about before the show aired about how, I mean, the Songa Center is right up our window here, and it'd be cool to see an event there. They had done one 3 years ago. They did a more localized card.
I was actually, that was the GSL.
Yeah.
I think they still run shows. They tried to get pretty big about 3 or 4 years ago. And there was John Benoit, who was a fighter from Stewart, was the main event.
Okay.
It's actually a really good fight and a pretty good card. But they pubbed it. I think they even had a special one on Nesson that sort of previewed the show. They were really trying to pump ticket sales and take a big step. And it didn't draw, I think, the way they wanted to.
Because the funny thing is, for hockey, so there's an ice rink, so you can't put seats there. The Riverhawks got over 7,000 people in that arena.
Yeah, true.
Okay, so you add the floor seats, so you're talking 75, 8,000 fans maybe. They could fit in that. Bangor's seats like 6,000. So the fact that they could have more seats here in Lowell, Massachusetts than they can in Bangor obviously plays into the fact that what's his name's from Bangor, so it's not, or lives in Bangor, so it's not. That has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, I'm certain it probably wouldn't even be going on in Bangor if he wasn't from around that area.
Most fighters came out of Bangor or Maine that 10 years down the road they're like, let's do another show in Bangor because Tim Sylvia's coming back and Tim Boach is going to be on it, and so and so John Doe is going to be a fighter. It's just not coming back. So people should really be taking advantage of this if you live in Bangor and don't want to drive to Boston. But even Boston may not have a show for another 10 years like it's been. I mean, what was it? When was the last show? 08? Before this one?
It's been a while.
Before the show in Boston in 2013. When was the
Edgar
last
versus Penn 2 was in August 2010. So we're going on 4 years.
So 4 years. So 2018 is the next time Boston's going to get a show. If you go by...
And it might not even
be patient for that.
Yeah, it might even be longer than that because that Fox Sports 1 card last summer, if you remember, the commission gave them so much headache.
Unbelievable. I mean, being in this area, Boston is a sports town. It is unbelievable that the UFC can come to all these places. They were just in Tulsa, Oklahoma, or whatever. It's like, how can Tulsa, Oklahoma get a show, but Boston gets one every 4 years? So it is just an interesting thing, and I think it's going to be a great fight card. I mean, there's a couple like Nolan Tickman is their debut. And Frankie Sanders their debut with the UFC. They actually just are on there because of the way the cards fell apart.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Ross Pearson and Gray Maynard was made off of an injury to Trujillo, and then they dropped, I forget who it was, but there was Pearson was supposed to face someone else. Was it Pearson was facing someone else? Or?
I thought he was on the card initially, but it was somebody else who was facing.
And then so they dropped him off the card completely, and then all of a sudden I checked no one MMAfighting.com or USA Today, MMA Junkie, none of those websites had this fight anywhere. And I looked on UFC.com and there's just these two people with a black figure silhouette. So they're guys, you go on Google and they don't even have a Wikipedia page. It's like, who are these people? So that fight's going to be the one that's opening tonight. And because there's only 10 bouts, there's no fight cast trailer. So they're all on Fox Sports 2, Fox Sports 1. So if you get both those channels, it's going to be a great fight. And we'll have coverage as well. But let's get into some predictions. But first, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Going to a Lowell Spinners game is always a home run for the entire family. It's pro ball for the love of the game and its fans. And it's a great way to see future Red Sox greats play their way toward Fenway.
Spinners baseball is great for the kids. They get to run around the bases before the game, meet the players, and we can actually afford to go to more than one ball game a season. Get in the game. Family fun, single game tickets and mini plans are available right now at lowellspinners.com.
And to add on to that Lowell Spinners thing, I will be there tonight covering the game for Mill City Sports. If anybody wants to follow along on Twitter or join us at the game, I'll be there. But so let's get into some predictions. I mean, we do our weekly predictions throughout the season, the year really, because there's no season in mixed martial arts or UFC. But
one of the fun things about it.
But I don't know if Greg, if you have look up the last one we have the card so you can see where we are standing.
I'll bring that up and see what we're doing.
But we normally don't pick prelims. We've been doing just main cards. Because main cards is, like, again, how are you going to pick Nolan Tickman versus right?
He's going to have to throw it out there like, I don't know.
So, and that will end in a controversial decision, and we'll be mad about the fact that you got it wrong. Correct. So when we get into the main card, to just add to this whole, because of this special we're doing on MCS Live radio, we're going to pick the prelim cards just to see who's going to win. And then when you get to the main card, throw an extra thing in there if you want, like I think it's going to end in the first round. You can pick the person you want to win in the first round, or you can just say, I don't know who's going to win. It's just going to end in the first round. Just to add a little bit to it and just have some fun with it. If you think someone's going to end in a submission or a knockout or a TKO, or if it's going to end in a no contest. So I'm only going to pick Frankie in the first fight because he's got 10 professional fights in his career. And he's on a 4-fight win streak. All that stuff when you're fighting for other promotions goes out the window when you come into the UFC because it is a different animal. And actually for them, if you think about it, it's probably best that they're being debuted in Bangor. It is a small show. You're not debuting a Jones-Cormier card in Las Vegas. I mean, these guys don't really have the pressure to come in here and fight for the crowd. They're just going there to fight, to win, to keep their... And it's probably a one-fight contract right now anyway, so, because they are just small people. But I'm going to pick Frankie in the first fight. 4-fight win streak kind of does it for me. Who do you got, Greg?
I've got Frankie Santos, too. Just like I think I was thinking the same thing. Nolan Tickman's only got 5 fights under his belt. So, and it's like, it's interesting with this, even though, like, I usually look on UFC.com to see, like, all of their interesting stats that they've got for, like, significant strikes landed per minute, all, like, in the grappling kind of thing. But there's nothing to go off of with them. So it's kind of hard to pick, but I'm going to go with Frankie, too, because he's got a little bit more MMA experience, at least. So. And,
it's like I said, it's a 50-50. You want a coin here? I got a coin here, Mike. You want to flip it
out that way?
Yeah, I went with Frankie, too, just experience. Experience is on his side. The 4-fight win streak's impressive. I don't know who it was against, obviously. I mean, it could have been against the guy living down the street, but still, he's got 10 fights under his belt. I think that can go a long way, especially early on in the guy's career where, he's got 10 fights. It doesn't sound like a lot. It's double the amount that Tickman has. So, I mean, experience is definitely.
And this is professional fight, so we don't know when we're not on Sure Dog or because they are the epitome. You don't know he could have 18 amateur fights.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the same. You get the pads on your shins and things like that, but it is still a fight. And we've seen things like Combat Zone where it's like they needed a fighter, so the guy felt it, and he went in and just started throwing swings and things like that. You're like, who is this guy? I mean, I think the last card that I was at that you ended up not being able to make, but there was a guy in there, and he was just like running around, and he ended up getting TKO'd, but it was like, what are you doing? So that could have been more like one of the fights that he won. So it's kind of a crapshoot on that one. I'm going with Stan Alvey in the next fight. Again, 4-fight win streak. He's got the experience behind him. It's 28 fights compared to the 3 fights for Watson, and Watson's lost 3 of the last 4 fights. So I just feel like, Alvey's got this next one too.
I was gonna, it's another coin flip on this one. I was gonna go with Tom Watson just because I saw more of his. He has more stats on UFC.com and showing like the type of things he has. He's like. I mean, Alvey's got more experience. It's tough to pick these, so I almost did a coin flip with this. I'm going with Watson, so hard to explain it, back it out, but.
I sort of went the same direction, Justin. I mean, you got a guy that's on a 4-fight win streak against a guy who's lost 3 out of his last 4. Just going with how they've done a little more recently, I'm going to go with that.
And then this next fight, it's difficult, but it's not difficult. And I actually put 4 on the paper you guys have in front of you. It says 8-1 for Murphy, but she's actually 8 now. I don't know how I up. But Sarah McMahon has the capability that when Ronda Rousey says I'm going to do movies instead of fight, and that's all she's going to do, I think McMahon could have the opportunity to be. She's got the wrestling background. She's got the fight experience to be a champion in the UFC. So I honestly don't think it's going to be a contest. I think she's going to take it and she's going to run with on this one. McMahon's got this one.
I'm definitely going with McMahon on that one too. As we talked about, she's 7-1, but her only losses were against the greatest women's fighter in, like, you could say, in the world. I would definitely say. And Lauren Murphy doesn't have any actual experience in the UFC. She's got 8-0 in MMA overall, but she's never actually fought in the top league in the world. So I'm definitely going to go with McMahon on that one. I can't see myself picking Murphy over her.
Yeah, neither can I. McMahon gave Ronda Rousey a really good fight when they fought, and Ronda Rousey nobody has given Ronda Rousey a really good fight other than Sarah McMahon. I mean, not only has she won every single fight she's been in, she hasn't come close to losing one. I mean, she's dominated pretty much everyone. And again, I agree. I think McMahon takes this one pretty easily and probably finishes pretty early.
And I almost feel bad for Murphy. It's like you're coming in against the person who's only lost ever was Ronda Rousey.
Yeah, the champion. So.
Seriously.
It's interesting with Rousey's last. Who was the person that she just beat her last fight?
Rousey beat?
Yeah.
In the
who's her last fight again?
Yeah,
I don't remember it off the top of my head.
Yeah, on the spot there.
I know, it just happened. I can't remember who she was fighting.
12 seconds.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, I just couldn't remember her name, but who she fought there. And, like, going up into that fight, they were saying this is going to be Rousey's biggest test of her career. And the way they were both getting into it, Rousey spoke highly of her. And it was just insane because everybody's thinking, like, oh, it's going to be a longer fight probably because everybody's talking about how good this girl is.
Alexis Davis,
yeah. So everybody's thinking about how good that fight was going to be. And then it's just, like 10 seconds or maybe less than that. It was just boom, onto the ground and TKO, like, right away.
Which is not Ronda Rousey's style either.
No.
She didn't get someone in an arm bar.
Yeah, and that's she ends almost all of her fights.
I mean, she didn't submit someone. That's just unbelievable. So I think McMahon's going to get this one.
Yeah, just giving credit to McMahon of like how she was able to push her for a longer, almost got through one round with her, so which is pretty good. So it's just on your resume.
And then in the final fight, the main fight on the first prelim card would be Formiga, or his nickname, but versus Zach Bukowski. Excuse me. Bukowski's on a 4-fight win streak. I mean, should I just roll with that and just be like anybody on a 4-fight win streak is going to win on Saturday? Yeah. So I'm going to go with Bukowski.
I had the same thought as you did with a 4-fight win streak. I'm just going to roll with him. Formiga's in their weight classes. Formiga's ranked number 6 and Bukowski's number 9 right now. So it's going to be a pretty nice matchup, I think. I'll go with Bukowski with that.
Yeah, same here. I like the guys that are on a roll. Pretty much when I make picks in anything, whether it's MMA, hockey, whatever it is. If there's a team or a guy that's on a roll and pretty hot, I tend to lean towards that. Those recent results as opposed to the results as a whole. So I'm going to stick with Bukowski as well.
Unless they're facing Ronda Rousey. Then you
sure. Exactly. Then all that goes other way.
And the thing is, too, if you want to play superstition, Formiga alternates his wins and losses in the past 4 fights, and he just won.
Oh, okay.
So he's going to lose this fight. Just want to go off of that.
This is how it's going to go.
Okay, then we go to the main card. Thiago Tavares versus Robbie Peralta. It's like I said earlier, it's Tavares' featherweight debut. He usually fights at lightweight. Sometimes that drop down can be to your advantage. Sometimes it can be to your disadvantage because you're cutting more weight. Just for that alone, how much the weight cut affects someone, I'm just gonna have to pick Peralta. That's low on the weight class drop alone. I think that's it. And I don't know how that fight's gonna go. I think it's gonna go to the decision. Honestly, that's my little throw in there. A decision, Peralta.
It wouldn't be a bad prediction there. I was leaning more towards Thiago Tavares this time just because when you look at the way they finish fights, Robbie Peralta is more of a stand-up guy who gets more knockouts and TKOs. Tavares he's won most of his fights by submissions. So just thinking about that, I was sort of thinking in my head that maybe Tavares is going to come in with a good game plan, and if Peralta's going to try and stand him up more, maybe if Tavares gets him on the ground, that's going to be his main strategy, and like he can win the fight that way. So I'm thinking I'm going to go with Tavares on this prediction, and I would say maybe it ended in a submission. If that's the way he likes to go, and Robbie isn't prepared to defend that, then maybe we'll see Tavares pull that off.
I'm going to go with Tavares because I like his style, but I think he only wins if he finishes the fight and probably submits Peralta, because with that weight cut, if it goes deep into that 3rd round, you don't know how that's going to affect the guy. You don't know how it's going to affect the stamina. So I think Tavares is going to get the win, but if he does, he's going to have to finish it no earlier than the first half, or no later than the first half of the 3rd round, because the longer that fight goes, I think the more it's going to play into Peralta.
Correct. Yeah, it's a good point.
That would certainly make sense.
The only heavyweight, which I'm glad because there's fight cards that don't have any heavyweights on it at all. Like when you go see mixed martial arts, it's nice to see flyweight, like the Formiga versus Bukowski. That's a flyweight fight, which is awesome because they're so lightweight and they move so fast. But sometimes it's almost like they should shrink the octagon for the smaller fighters as well. Because sometimes you watch the fights on TV and see them running around. You see there's not a lot of action going on. There's movement, but it's like when being hockey fans too and covering hockey, It's like when the little midget hockey kids get out there. And they have to put the nets like at center ice because it's so small. So having heavyweights on this is going to be a lot of fun to watch and stuff like that. But I don't trust Sean Jordan right now. I don't know why. I just feel like Sean is going to lose in the first round via knockout to Jack May. 7-1, gets his 15-6. I just have a feeling in my body, and that's the only reason I'm going on that. But first round knockout, not even TKO. I'm going knockout. Like he's going to be on his back.
For that one, I chose. I'm actually going to go against you and pick Sean Jordan because he has more experience. He's 15-6 overall. Jack May is 7-1, but his only loss in his career was a UFC fight. So that makes you think that maybe he's not as prepared for a UFC bout. But I'm going to go with Sean Jordan on that, and I think. Two heavyweights, I'd like to see a knockout with that. It's always fun to see them go at it standing up, so I would like to see a knockout in that fight, too. That would be kind of fun, I think.
I'm going to go with Sean Jordan for the one reason, and I will admit this, I know very little about Jack May. I don't think I've ever seen him. And I know who Sean Jordan is. So, therefore, I'm going to go with Sean. I think, experience in all of those 7 wins, I don't believe any of them will come in the UFC. So it's a guy that has a lot of UFC experience against a guy that has almost none. So.
And his only loss is coming in the UFC.
Is he only one in the UFC? He only had one UFC fight?
Yeah, so his only loss was in the UFC.
He was on Verdun Brown, UFC on Fox 11 in April. He lost to Derek in the first round via TKO.
Yeah, so it's an experience.
And that's the thing is, I went the opposite on it because I went by experience on other cards, and then I don't know. It's one of those things. Heavyweight is probably the top of the heap when you find out like ones that go, oh my gosh, did that just happen? Because it is one punch that could just catch someone.
Yeah, that's true.
But in the same sense, how many fights have we seen, heavyweight fights in the past year, have we seen go the distance? And Mark Hunt and Antonio. Antonio Silva, Bigfoot Silva. That was an unbelievable fight. That went. Roy Nelson went the distance recently. Like that. So a lot of these fights could. When Dana White just said one of the fights that and that wasn't like it was who was the fight that was Brown versus the recent one, Brown versus Lawler.
Yeah.
That's not a heavyweight fight. But I'm just saying that's one of the guys who have packed huge punches.
Yeah.
And Dana White's like, I'm gonna walk back to Las Vegas from San Diego. If the fight goes the distance, and it went the distance. I don't think Dana White's going to say that again. But like I said, people with big punches and people with lots of power recently have gone the distance more often. Not more often, but lately they've seen that. And one of the best fights of the past 12 months was the Hunt versus Silva fight. That was just unbelievable to watch. And so it could go the distance, but I think we all picked knockout TKO on that one.
Yeah.
The next one. That's a tough one. That's a coin flip as well, because of the fact that is it Juban? You think? I don't know. Alan Juban is making his UFC debut. He's in a 2-fight win streak, but again, we don't know how that promotion lasted, how the competition could have been.
Yeah, that's true.
You could be in a professional MMA thing in like northern Montana where there's like 6 fighters, and then Seth Pazinski has lost 3 or 4 fights. It's one of those things that you could say. Maybe Seth gets his feet under him this time and wins, or he loses this fight to a newcomer. I'm going to give small arena debut win, Alan Juban.
I was going to go the same with Juban because it's his debut. I want to see him get excited about making his debut here, and I think going up against a guy like Vaczynski with being 1-3 in his last 4 fights is going to be a good opportunity for him because you're not going up against someone who's got a few fights, a 3-fight win streak or something where they're gaining confidence. Like Vaczynski's coming in thinking, I need to do something differently, so he doesn't have that confidence. I think it's a good opportunity for Juban to prove himself.
I'm going to take Vaczynski only because I think he's a guy that we talked a little bit about this earlier, guys that are right on the verge of being cut. Mm-hmm. If he loses this fight to a guy who debuts, he's probably cut.
Yeah,
he's probably done.
So, 1 in 4 in 5 fights, and one of them is a newcomer.
Exactly.
That's kind of tough.
So he's got his back up against the wall against a UFC newcomer, but it could go one of 2 ways. He could come out and try something new and get caught and get knocked out in the first round, or he could get himself submitted in the first round if he tries to do something different because he knows his back is up against the wall, or he responds to it by putting on one of the better performances of his career and picks up a win. So I'm leaning towards. I think he's going to put on one of the better performances of his career and pick up a win. but it could go either way. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me at all to see him get submitted or knocked out in the first round simply because he's trying to do something that he hasn't done.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny, even when it's a coin flip, sometimes I look back to see just who they've beaten, even if it's been a long time since they've beaten a person. I mean, there's times like Conor McGregor is like 18-2 or 8-2 or something like that. The people have beaten him. I wonder how they're thinking when they're in Ireland and they're seeing him on the UFC. They say, hey, I'm the guy that beat that guy. You know what I mean? Like, you see that stuff to happen. Pizzi's beat Matt Brown, who just was in a title eliminator. You know what I mean? We had one of the most hype fights of the couple of months they were in. He's beat him. But then again, he beat him a long time. It was UFC 139, so that was 2011. So that's a couple of years ago.
Like ages ago.
It was Shogun versus Henderson, 139. So yeah, it's a little, you could go either way on that one. And I'm not even going to go into explanation of why, but Boach is beating Tavares because just get the home. And I said this to Greg before, and we were talking about this before. I don't think people give enough credit to the home arena advantage. I think the fact that all the Irish winners won in Ireland, that place was the best looking and sounding UFC event ever in history of the promotion. And that's the reason why I think Tim Boach is going to win, because he just has the fans of Maine behind him.
Yeah, it's just interesting because with a sport like this, you don't very often see a home arena advantage. Usually, like you can have guys that will go home and they'll say, like if a fighter's from Brazil and they have an event in Brazil, it's like they're not necessarily near their hometown. Like Maine, it's like it's in one state, like you're in your home state. It's like, you know, it's not the smallest or the larger state, so he's not like, you know, in his backyard. Like if you say you're from Boston and you're fighting in your hometown, but it's a very unique experience, I think. And he probably never thought he would have a UFC fight in Maine, like in his hometown, because the state isn't really, you wouldn't think it's big enough for that type of a draw. But with this, I think it's going to give him that bit of a momentum, and he'll really feel the energy off of the crowd, hopefully, from that.
I want Tim Boach to win.
The thing is, I'm willing to take a loss in the prediction on that one because I don't want to bet against Boach on this one. But Tavares has won 5 out of the last 6 fights, and his only last loss was against Yoel Romero, who's a beast.
Yeah.
So it's not even like
and Boach is
3-4.
Lost 3
3-4. Yeah.
So if going again, we talked about it a little earlier. I like to go with how guys have done recently. My head tells me Tavares wins this fight, but I don't want him.
But listen, okay, go on the 3 out of the 4, and this is the fighter that I thought against who you've lost to. The 3 losses: Luke Rockhold, Mark Munoz, and Costa Filippo. Those are the 3 losses that Tim Boach lost.
Those are some respectable losses.
Yeah. And his win is against Stevie Dalloway. So, you know, it's not bad. So all those fights, I mean, that's one of those things that you kind of like, do you take the record into account? Do you take who you're fighting? But, and also your job as a fighter is to go in and beat the person you're put up against. So they lost to some big people. Yeah, well, maybe because he wasn't good enough to fight them. I don't know. Yeah. But I'm totally picking Boach. And I think it's going to have so much emotion that he's going to have to finish in the first round and a half because he's going to go for it. So if he doesn't finish in the first round and a half, then he could lose the fight just by a small mistake. Yeah. But I think he's gonna finish the first round.
Well, the thing I think is interesting with this, like I think all 3 of the top main fights that we're getting into now are all very interesting, and they're all gonna be very fun to watch. I think the Boach Tavares one's gonna be interesting because with obviously the hometown guy with Boach, Tavares, you know he's gonna be thinking about that. He's gonna be thinking like this would be pretty sweet to take it away from him and his home crowd like that. And also Tim Boach, if you go by the weight class rankings, Tim Boach is ranked number 14 in his weight class. Tavares isn't ranked yet, so you think like this is going to be one of those fights that, you know, he's got, you know, a hot streak going now. He wins this fight, people are going to start to notice him a lot more, and that's going to launch him back up into the rankings, which, you know, he's going to be thinking about all these things. So that's going to be an interesting matchup to see.
And then your co-main event is I guess is one of the fights I'm looking forward to watching, except for the fact that I just think Ross Pearson is going to win it. I don't think Gray Maynard has what he had maybe when he first came into the UFC, when he first started fighting. I think Ross Pearson is someone to mess with. Like, you don't want to mess with him. I think he's going to be a contender at some point in the near future if he can continue to get the momentum on his side. I feel like he should have beat or Diego Sanchez beat him, right?
By the decision.
He should have beat him.
Yes.
Right? So it's not Diego Sanchez has a winner on his record, but he really should.
Yes.
Okay, I'm just
Pearson should have had that one, yeah.
Because Pearson should have won that fight. So if you go by record, like we've been going by a little bit here, is that technically he has a loss on his record, but really it should have been a win. So I think Pearson's someone not someone you want to mess with, even though he's not ranked. Gray Maynard wouldn't be ranked either if they didn't expand the rankings to 15 instead of just 10.
Yeah.
So I think Pearson's gonna I think it's gonna go to distance though. So I think Pearson's gonna win it, but it's gonna be by a split decision.
Well, Pearson, I mentioned this earlier in the show too. He's one of those guys that he's finished fights in a lot of different ways, and I think he's going to find a way in order to beat Gray Maynard. And Maynard's the guy who he's won most of his fights have gone to distance. I mean, in the back of Ross Pearson's mind in his last fight, it went to distance, and he probably felt pretty confident, like, yeah, I think I won that. And he's probably thinking, like, last time he kind of got screwed out of it. I probably don't want to let that happen again. He's not going to be thinking, all right, I'm going to box this guy out and I want to go to distance and win the decision. He's probably going to want to finish this so that there's no contest in it. And there's no doubt. There's not going to be any controversy with it. And you don't get the official nickname The Real Deal for no reason like that. So I think he's probably going to get this with a knockout. He's going to want to come up guns blazing.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I think Pearson wins the fight. I think Pearson wins the fight with a knockout. And probably early. I think Gray Maynard, like we said, I think he's lost a step. I don't think he's the same fighter he was 4 years ago or 3 years ago. And I think at the end of the day, he's going to find himself laying on the mat, looking up at the light.
I mean, it almost has to. Pearson probably is never going to want to fight to go ever the distance ever again. I think he'd rather. I think he'd rather lose the fight by trying to overcompensate, trying to win the fight by a knockout or submission.
Yep.
I think he'd rather get himself caught and say, you know what, I screwed up and I lost the fight. It's my fault. Than let someone who's usually a boxing judge to. I mean, who's going to be the judges up in Maine?
Yeah, that's
the problem. And especially I know in a lot of the Massachusetts cards, it's boxing judges who some of them are very good, and then others.
So no one
aren't really sure what they're looking at.
No one wants us to go the distance. Not a single fighter on the field. No one ever wants to go the distance. No. I was telling Greg earlier about how it's like ice skating. You got the person holding up a 10. It's like how it's like judging how your fight went.
Yeah.
It's really how it goes.
I got into an argument one time. Not an argument, but
I could see you.
One of the Combat Zone shows in Salem. There was a controversial decision, and I remember writing after the show that I thought the two judges that went, what was a split decision, the two judges that judged the fight in favor of the guy who won, I remember writing, not really criticizing them personally, like by name, but saying, I don't know what they were watching. Clearly, we were watching two different fights. And and one of the judges was at the next Combat Zone show and was sitting next to me. And he was like, hey, you told me I was an idiot about 3 months ago in the paper. And I said, yeah, well, I still think that. Just jokingly with him.
Freedom of speech.
Just sort of joke with him. But what I came away from that conversation was he was a boxing judge. And all he kept talking about, we were talking about the fight again, all he kept talking about was the strike. And I forget who, I remember Brett O'Terry, who was a fighter from Quincy, won the fight, and he fought Tom Moreau, I think it's from Derry, New Hampshire. I think that was, and he just kept talking about the striking. Oh, well, they were standing up. O'Terry was had better stand up and dominated when they were striking. And I said, yeah, that's true, but when Moreau took the fight to the ground, O'Terry couldn't do anything.
Right.
and the boxing judges didn't know how to judge that because it's not their fault. I mean, they're just they haven't watched the sport, so they don't know sometimes what they're looking at, and it ends up with some of these fights going in directions that I don't think they probably should.
So I think it helps with when we talked about earlier in the show how it's the fastest growing sport in the world. People are going to start to learn more about the different styles of jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, and all the different mixed martial arts that go into it, and learn about if one guy's doing something differently, then that's going to translate more into this guy should probably be winning the fight. And it just created so many problems in the last year or two alone, even with major title fights too. If you think about the controversial decisions with the last time GSP defended his belt and Alexander Gustafsson too, it's later title fights where a lot of people thought, ooh, we have a new champion now, and then they go the way of the champion. It's really interesting with that.
Championship belt, about 6, 7, 8 rounds. Let it go until someone knocks one out. Forget the decision.
Non-stop.
That
would be interesting.
In the tough series, and there's 2 rounds, and then if they tie after the 2 rounds, they go to the 3rd round until someone knocks each other out. Then he's an actual champion.
I was just reading
it's really interesting. It's like gladiator style. We're not leaving until someone's getting dragged out of that ring.
I was just reading an article online last night about some of the early UFC fights, and when Ken Shamrock and Royce Gracie had their super fight, I think at UFC 5 or whatever it was, they went 30 minutes. There was no at that point there were no rounds. There were no decisions.
True,
you fought till someone either got knocked out or submitted. I think at that point the referee could stop the fight. But they had gone 30 minutes and nobody had won. And they finally went, we don't know what to do. Let's just throw another 5 minutes on top of this because we don't know what's happening. No one had ever seen this before. They went like 36 minutes before they finally decided, you know what, this is a draw because these guys are going to die.
So I don't think anybody wants the decision to ever go to the decision. But I think even more in states that don't have fights normally. Like you think about it, like Las Vegas, you can let it go to a decision a little bit more because you have fights there all the time.
They're a little more experienced with
boxing judges have experience with UFC. But it would be kind of interesting. So we could do a whole 3 hours on judging.
We probably could, yeah.
I
believe the Pearson Sanchez one that was in New Mexico, correct?
Correct. Again, another place that doesn't have a lot of MMA fights. Yeah, they're more boxing. So then the main event, the main card, I would probably be on at like midnight, probably, right? Because 10 o'clock. Right around there. You know, that's one of those things with UFC events. But Mike and I will be leaving the arena at like 2 o'clock, 2:30 in the morning. But Bader, number 8, Owen St. Preux, number 10. Both of them coming off a stellar victory. Both of them are just catapulting themselves back up. I mean, Bader's got one of the best nicknames, I think, in all of sports. Ryan Darth Bader. And I think he really he looks like he can kill people. Like he really does. Like he does. But the thing is, though, I always notice that some of those people who do look like they can kill people aren't obviously sometimes the best, quickest, and best. But I think he has that. And I think that he could go on this fight. This fight could go the distance, but I honestly think that he's going to get beat by Owen St. Preux. I think Owen St. Preux has just got too much behind him right now. He's got a 5-fight win streak. He's up and coming. I think Bader had his opportunity. He lost it a couple of years ago, and I just think he never really is ever going to regain that title chance. And I think that if Owen St. Preux wins this fight, he catapults himself into not a immediate title shot. Like it's not like he's going to be the winner of the DC Jones fight. You know, this is light heavyweight, right? I'm getting the right division.
Yeah.
The winner of this fight. It's not like he's going to fight the winner, but I think that he could be one of those guys that fills in if it's an injury. You know what I mean? Like if there's the DC Jones, and then because they're fighting so close to each other too. So if the next fight is Alexander Gustafsson and Gustafsson or Jones gets injured, or whoever wins the Jones DC fight, I think you could put St. Preux in there in an instant and say he could fight for a title. So I think St. Preux's got this, but I do think, again, don't want it to go to the judges, but I do think both these guys have enough tools in their bags and enough record or enough history in mixed martial arts to know that they could go the distance, and that this could go the distance. Win though to Owen St. Preux.
So I think it's interesting because like initially I did actually want to pick Ryan Bader with this. It's with Bader and St. Preux, both of them. If you look at their track records, like the way they've all won in very like multiple different ways. Like it's almost even with how many times they've won by either a submission, knockout, TKO, or gone the distance for a decision. So I think that's really underrated. If you have a guy that's like a one-trick pony, like he likes to box people and he'll knock people out. Eventually, you're going to wind up getting into a fight with a guy who's a very good grappler, and he's going to know how to take you down to the ground and submit you. So I think with these types of guys, they're very well-rounded in the way that they can finish fights. And I think I'm going to go with St. Preux on that because we talked about like Bader's been very choppy with in his last I don't know how many fights. It's been a couple wins and maybe a loss, and it's been up and down. St. Preux's coming in with a 5-fight win streak. I think he's going to be able to win that one. And one thing that's interesting about this is I think Bader's never actually lost a fight when it's gone to the judges. He's 7-0 whenever it goes to a decision. I think
he pays them.
He pays them. I think this time I actually think this one could go to distance because they're both very well-rounded fighters. It would be I think it's probably going to be one of those fights I want to say where it'll go to the distance. It's going to be one of those ones where it's not going to be like lazily going the distance though, where they don't know what to do though. I think it's going to be quite a brawl, and I think Bader's actually going to get his first loss in a decision. I think St. Preux will win that way. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I agree. I think St. Preux wins the decision. I just think he's been a little more consistent. I mean, Ryan Bader's been all over the place, and the funny thing was, I just looked this up. They're the same age. Because I was going to say
older.
I was going to say St. Preux is sort of in a position where I feel like Bader was 3 or 4 years ago, and that's true in terms of like where they are in their career.
Correct.
But they're both 31. They're the same exact age. And Bader is a guy. I mean, I'm just looking at his record here now. he's beaten, in the last 4 years or 3 years, he's beaten Nogueira, he's beaten Rampage Jackson. He's also lost to Tito Ortiz, who was aging and could barely walk. And
isn't he a pro wrestler now or something?
Probably.
I think Tito is.
I think he'd be perfect for that kind of thing.
He's in Bellator now.
He is in Bellator. And he's lost to a guy like Machida, who's very good, but certainly, not on the rise of his career. He's kind of coming back down.
He's definitely had his prime when he was feared.
Yeah, I mean, he's been all over the place. So it sort of almost depends on which Ryan Bader we see. Are we going to see the guy that's beaten some of these guys, or are we going to see the guy who got choked out by Tito Ortiz, who's had how many neck surgeries and can barely walk?
And Owen State Pro's only lost in the past, I want to say since 2010 is against Gegard Mousasi. So that's a pretty good person to have a loss to, and to think that you're going to lose to. And Bader, like you said, I would think the same thing. He's way older. Bader was good at a young age.
That's the thing.
He was a younger fighter, But even someone like John, they fought John Jones, and John Jones. That fight, I want to say I remembered it pretty well, but I don't remember. I think Jones, he finished him in the
Finished him in the second round.
Yeah, so I mean, to know that you fought and got you at least into the second round to get to a fighter that's one of the best fighters in the world, you could see that Bader in there. But I like I said, are you picking St. Preux?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, is he gonna finish it, or is he gonna?
I think he wins the decision. I think it goes that far. But I was actually, when I looked at Ryan Bader, I thought he was 34 or 35 years old, because that's what it feels like. Because he's been around forever, and like you said, he was really good at a young age. But I was surprised to see that him and St. Preux are both 31. They're exactly the same age.
In Bader's one other thing also is Bader's been in the UFC for a long time. It's not even like he's been fighting and he's like, he's a young guy coming up. He's been in UFC since 2008.
Yeah.
So 7 years or so in the UFC, 6 years in the UFC. It's a pretty long career in the UFC. He's got some big wins, like you said, but he's also got
won the Ultimate Fighter. I mean, he's been in big fights.
Correct. I mean, he's an Ultimate Fighter winner, and that's one of the things that a lot of people don't. I mean, there's a lot of Ultimate Fighter winners too who tend to be nobodies.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
As an Ultimate Fighter, people who come in second and third end up being these all-star fighters. So that's our predictions. We got we're all picking St. Preux over Bader, and that's the big fight of the night. And then just quickly, what is the fight of the night? Like, not pick, but who's going to win the fight of the night performance?
Fight of the night, I want to say, I might go with Boch and Suarez, I think.
Yeah, me too.
I was going to say the same.
Yeah.
I'm going to say knockout of the night wins Pearson. If I want to say Pearson with a knockout, if you want to go that far.
Now I don't think the extra data do performance right now do knockout of the night, which is kind of stupid, but I think they only have to do that because there's cards now that's been only submissions and only knockout. We'll have Mill City Sports will have a live video and updates of the weigh-ins. Haven't decided if I'm going yet. Are you going to go for the weigh-ins?
I also.
Okay. I don't know if I'm going to go to the weigh-ins, but we'll have at least the video up there, the live video stream, and we'll do we'll update to see if someone missed weight or if they all made weight, stuff like that. There's no title fights. There's no have to be on point with your weight. You can be 1 pound over, 1 pound under, whatever, depending on the thing. And the heavyweight, you can be up to 265 now. So, and then we'll have I'll have a live blog going on. I'll be live tweeting. Mike will be live tweeting the event and updating for multiple outlets and things like that. And then we'll also have a live streaming of the post-fight press conference, and we'll give you tickets to buy a Base Nectar if you can spot Mike or I in the crowd.
There you go.
I got 2 tickets to Base Nectar if anybody wants them. So that's that. We'll have it, coming up also in the next month, which is kind of odd that New England has this happening. There's 2 fights for the UFC in New England within a few weeks of each other, and then at the same time is Bellator is having their event. And we're going to talk a little bit about that right after this.
Before we get out of our picking mode, I have our records. So from our last UFC on Fox, the last time we did our predictions for Lawler versus Brown, Justin and Mike were both 2-2. I was 4-0. Thank you very much. And so
hey, I was 4-0 the week before.
True. Okay. So since the website has started, we've been doing our Mill City Sports picks. Overall, I'm behind you guys, so that I don't have much credibility with that anyway. But since this website has started, Justin has been overall 29-10. Mike is 28-11, so you're both really close on that, and I'm just behind 26-13 overall.
And you saved yourself because you were way behind there for a while. You were batting 500 almost.
There was one where I was like, I think maybe like 2-5 in the main card, something like that. Like I had a horrible couple nights.
But you look at those numbers. Clearly, we know what we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. If I was a fighter, I'd still be in the UFC at 29.
I might have won the heavyweight title back.
So we're going to take a break, but we'll be right back.
The champ, Pat Curran. Patricio Pitbull defeats.
Friday, September 5th, Curran Pitbull 2 for the featherweight world title.
Oh my God! Pat Curran does not disappoint. Those were thunderous shots by Pitbull.
Plus, King Mo, Brennan Ward, and Czech Congo return.
Wow!
And Bobby Lashley makes his Bellator debut live at Mohegan Sun Arena. Get your tickets now at the box office, Ticketmaster, or Bellator.com.
So that's happening. Bellator 123 is happening on the same night. 2 miles away from UFC Fight Night 50, Jacare versus I just had it here. Jacare versus Mustafi. Same night, okay? First of all, we know Bellator is not even close. And Dana White says this. He doesn't even think about it. I know he thinks about it. We've covered.
By saying he doesn't think about it tells you that
we've covered enough hockey games and enough sports events combined, 3 of us, to know that whenever someone says something, they usually mean the opposite. When you ask Norm Bazin over at the Riverhawks, they say, "Is the team, is thinking about frozen Fenway?" No, they're not thinking about it. It's just a game. It's just they're thinking about it. So, but Bellator, both in Connecticut, one's at Mohegan Sun, one's at Foxwood, both on free TV, or not free TV, cable TV, but they both don't have to pay pay-per-view. Is it, between the both of you, is it even close, or is the UFC going to get more viewers on that night?
I don't think it's very close. We both discussed. I think with the UFC Fight Night, it's probably going to be a lot more popular. I think. Overall.
Yeah, I think so too. In terms of like cable numbers, UFC is going to trump Bellator anytime.
I think so.
Is the fight card close?
Well, I was just going to say, I don't think this is a bad Bellator card.
No, it's not.
From a drawing standpoint, right. Pat Curran's a name, like the casual MMA fan, right? Pat Curran's a name they're going to know. Czech Congo, LeVar Johnson, King Mo, even Bobby Lashley. These are guys that casual fight fans are going to know.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really good card for them, and it's a good. I don't want to say good job, good effort, but it's one of, in terms of like drawing power, it's one of the better cards I think they're able to put together at this point for the casual fan that might not know, the Rick Hahns and these guys that they have that are up and coming.
Bellator's been listening to this show, and they were waiting for you, Mike McMahon, to say, "Good job, good card." So they're glad that you said that. Now they'll get approval. So now it's actually official. It wasn't official before that.
Now it is.
but in the same sense, look at the UFC card.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Jacare versus Mustafi, Overeem, who has been looking like he's a light heavyweight as of recently, and pictures he's posted on Instagram and Twitter, so that against Rothwell.
His head shrunk. His head actually shrunk.
Well, when you stop taking PEDs,
that's what
happens. And then the fight obviously I'm looking forward to. I'm sure Mike is too, and Greg too. Joe Lozon versus I looked this up before, but did he win the Ultimate Fighter? Yeah, he won the Ultimate Fighter, right? Season 16 or 15 or something like that.
I believe it was 16.
Yeah, you're right.
That fight, I am a huge Joe Lozon fan, and part of that's a biased opinion because he's from Massachusetts, fights in Massachusetts, things like that. But I've just always said, if you were a fight or new to UFC or you new to MMA, you want to see a fight and you want to see a performance in the night, you watch Joe Lozon because he leaves the UFC. And I think he's made more money off of bonuses than he has off of actual salary for fighting and winning. He wins more. He wins bonuses when he loses. He wins fight of the night when he loses. And then Michael Chiesa, I've always been a fan of him. Big, nice beard and things like that. I think that fight's going to be great. But one of the questions I also had about this fight, and it's weird that it's on the same night, the UFC says, no, it's not a competition. Bellator says it wasn't on purpose, or UFC says it wasn't on purpose. It's hard to think that the UFC didn't do it on purpose because when is the last time a UFC fight been on a Friday night?
Exactly.
That's true.
They do it on Wednesday night, but when's the last time? Bellator usually fights on Friday night to not compete with the UFC because they know they're not the UFC.
Yeah.
When is the last time a UFC fight's been on a Friday night? It's
I
not
wonder,
even in the United States.
Yeah, I wonder how much the holiday weekend has to do with that.
Correct.
That's true too. You don't know what's going on with the venues themselves.
Correct.
True.
But
So you don't know exactly,
it's a weird aspect of
I do see that. Yeah.
Oh, it's definitely weird. Actually, you know what? I think the last time, and I could be wrong about this, but I think the last time UFC ran a card on a Friday night would have been, I think, the Lesnar-Overeem fight, when Overeem beat Lesnar, like right before New Year's Eve in whatever year that was, 2012 maybe?
Wasn't Lesnar was in the UFC. So
When Lesnar was still in the UFC. So I think that was a Friday night card because, like, New Year's Eve was on Saturday.
Right.
So it's always been something, it had something to do with another reason. It's not like they regularly run on Friday.
But if you could choose it, wouldn't you just choose the next night? Like if you had the opportunity to do it on Saturday night so that they're not on the same night? You know, for me personally, I'll be probably sitting here watching it on TV. It's a local card, so I was thinking about going, but I decided not to. But I might switch back and forth. Like, I'm not a big Mack McMahon fan. I'm not, Derek Lewis. Yeah. So during that fight, there may be a fight like Chet Congo or King Mo that I might want to switch over to Spike TV.
Those ones could actually be interesting.
As an MMA fan, I'm not loyal to the UFC. I'm loyal to the UFC because they put the best production value on. They have the best fighters. They're definitely they're more on now. Like, pretty much every weekend is the UFC card.
Yeah.
More reasons.
Almost every weekend. Yeah.
So 3 weeks and off in a row here is kind of weird, but I don't care who wins the Bellator belt, honestly. I think, is it Coker, the new guy?
Scott Coker.
I think he's going to do wonders for the UFC. I think Redby was an awful CEO of the company. I think he's going to do wonders. I mean, he just proved it yesterday when he cut War Machine.
Which is a great move.
Oh, great move. That's a UFC move.
Oh,
that's a Dana White move. Yeah. That is perfect for that. I don't think it's going to be competition. I think UFC Fight Night 50 is going to go way higher than it. But I think there will be MMA.
Sure.
There'll be MMA fans who don't know about Bellator who won't know that it's even on. But
that's true. Yeah.
It's true though. That's the way it is. It is UFC and then it's Bellator way down, and then World Series of Fighting is right after that. They've got good fighters, but Bellator and UFC World Series of Fighting got the fighters that no longer fight in the UFC.
That's true.
Or signed with the Bellator because they couldn't sign with the UFC and they're stuck in a huge long-term contracts like Pat Curran and Eddie Alvarez, people who can't get out of their contracts.
Yeah. You also mentioned with the providers too that Fox Sports 1 is going to put on a way better production than Spike TV.
Spike TV. There's a reason why UFC is not with Spike TV anymore. Yes, they can see their friends and things like that, but Fox Sports Live is the only sports show on TV that has updates from UFC fights. I mean, ESPN's been doing a lot of, which is kind of weird. I realized that recently. ESPN's doing a lot of announcements for fights and things like that. I'm like, doesn't that kind of interfere with the whole Fox Sports 1 thing? Like, isn't Fox Sports 1 trying to, like, compete? So wouldn't you say to Dana White, you get an exclusive contract with us to announce your fights on our network? It just seems kind of weird lately that there's been a lot on ESPN.
Because I've noticed that. I've noticed that too.
Like, they've like announced Alexander Gustafsson, John Jones, or whatever on SportsCenter.
Yeah.
And it's like, can you do that on Fox Sports Live? But that's besides the fact. But I'm just saying, like, they, I think the card itself is better. I think Bellator had to do this card to even think they were going to compete.
Yeah,
probably.
I think both are going to sell out.
Sure.
I think there's enough people that will go see both. I think Bellator's fights are usually cheaper, less expensive. So you're not gonna, if you want to go see MMA fight, and you don't care who it is. And this is only the main card for Spike TV. I honestly could probably know anybody on their early card on Spike.com.
They take some. Well, a lot of times they've taken a lot of local guys and brought them on the undercard. I know, like Saul Almeida has fought their undercards before. There's been a couple of other local guys.
Saul was definitely the one. I think Saul's got an opportunity.
Me too.
He's great, and he's a great fighter. He's great attitude.
Anthony Leone's another one. I think is from around here. Oh yeah, it might be from like west or eastern part of New York. They bring in a lot of local guys,
which is kind of what they have to do. I mean,
sure.
They try to be the next big promotion. You got to have somewhere. You got to get fighters somewhere.
Yep.
You can't always get the cuts from the UFC because of the reason why they get cuts from the UFC. I mean, there's some fighters who have revived their careers, like going. Is it Bobby Green? No, it's not Bobby Green. Who just recently fought on the card. But it was one of them went over to he had a weight cut problem. He always missed weight, but he went over to Bellator and fought for a little bit. World Series of Fighting and fought for a little bit, and came back, and now he's like, like the UFC. Like the only reason we cut him is because he couldn't make weight. He wasn't a bad fighter. He just couldn't make weight. He never was on weight. So that is an interesting thing. But tonight, we're not really going to talk about it because I don't care about World Series of Fighting, but it's fun to watch. And the reason why I was telling Greg earlier is I do watch Bellator. I do watch World Series of Fighting when there isn't a UFC fight.
Sure.
Yeah.
If I'm at home, I just finished with the Spinners game, or I just finished with UMass Lowell hockey game, come back to my apartment and I'm writing, and I want something on TV while I'm writing to kind of keep me company, my wife's asleep or whatever, I put on Bellator.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Friday night, whatever. I'll put on World Series of Fighting on Saturday night on NBC Sports Center because it's free. I can watch it. I can say, you know what? Oh, cool, Pat Curran won the title. That's cool. But I'm not like, and we do follow on those sports some of the big news, like when Coker got hired to replace him. That's big news. It's good for the promotion. But I'm not really like, I'm probably going to watch World Series of Fighting tonight just a little bit just to see how it goes. And I like Nick Newell.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got great future. There's some players that are up and coming with the World Series of Fighting that could come back. When John Fitch is not fighting tonight, but Fitch is fighting in the near future, he's ex-UFC fighter and stuff like that. So they've got some good people. They're not even close to even Bellator, I don't think.
Well, it's funny. I mean, that's on free TV, and I know we're going to talk about this a little later. I'm almost a little more excited about the Metamoris show tonight than I am the World Series Fighting show, just because there's some bigger names on it. I mean, a lot of it just comes down to name value with a lot of these guys, too. Who do you recognize? It's fun to watch the guys come up and watch that progression from no names, and I've never heard of them, to fighting for titles. But sometimes, too, I mean, a lot of it's name value, who you know already.
And some of it goes to the point where, like, some of these fighters who are locked into their contracts with the UFC or untouchables, like the UFC, even if they lose a fight, there's no way the UFC is cutting them. At these levels, at the World Series of Fighting, they may not get cut, but they're not going to get noticed unless they fight their butts off. And I think that's part of also with Bellator and World Series of Fighting and some of these other ones, ONE FC and Titan Fighting Club or Fighting Championship, and some of these other smaller ones for women in Invicta. Yeah. You see them fight really hard, like they really well, because they want to make that next step. Yeah. And it was just recently, I don't forget who it was, that just got released from his contract with, I think it was Titan Fighting Championship, to come to the UFC. They've actually got a Zuffa clause. Yeah. That says, a lot of them if you do well and the UFC wants you, you can get released from your contract if you go to the UFC.
Which the way it should.
And you have to schedule the fight within the next 30 days. It's like a special thing. You can't just go to the UFC and say next year we'll have you a fight. Yeah. The UFC has to schedule a fight for you in the next 30 days to release your contract.
Which is, I think that's good for the fighters.
Yeah.
I mean, that keeps their options open. A lot of, it's funny too, I was just watching last night. We talk about some of these smaller promotions where guys just fight their butts off, try to get noticed. For the first time in a while, I used to watch it religiously, and I haven't in a while, but I watched it last night. Inside MMA on Action TV. Mm-hmm. I watched it last night, and I thought they did a really good job showing a lot of these smaller shows, and like their knockouts of the week, and they go everywhere. I mean, they're showing you knockouts from Japan and from some small show in Alabama that I've never heard of, but
someone's farm.
Yeah, exactly. One of them looked like it was in somebody's barn. It literally looked like it was in somebody's barn.
Is that Boss Ruden's show?
It is, yeah. And I mean, he's not making any sense. He's just blabbing on about whatever he's talking about.
He's been here.
Has he really?
Because wasn't Boss Rutan in the fight? The movie with
Here Comes the Boom.
Oh.
He was in that movie, yeah.
And they filmed that here at the Songa Center.
Oh, really?
Fight scenes in that movie were at the Songa Center.
I had no idea.
Yeah, you have to go home and watch that now. I got it on Blu-ray. You can borrow it.
It was on Stars the other night. I was actually watching it.
I watched the fight scene.
So which all the fight scenes?
All the fight scenes were here, and it's kind of funny because we've been in there for UMass Love Hockey and other events and things like that, and it's funny to see all the stuff was taken down. That's obviously they're not going to.
Oh yeah.
It's supposed to be like Chicago or LA or something like that. Yeah. But yeah, all the fight scenes were here, and along with the movie The Fighter. But I think you knew that one.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, that's more
popular. But it's just funny. You look around, and you're like, hey, that's where they get my pizza. I'll
have to go back and watch. I had no clue.
Don't watch the whole movie because it's not worth watching. But if you just watch the fight scenes, it's worth watching.
Fonzie.
Was Chris Lieben in that movie too?
He was. Yeah.
It was the green hair and stuff like that.
Jeff Sonner was in that movie. There was a lot of
really good guys in that movie. But there is a World Series of Fighting tonight, and they didn't pay for advertising on the thing, but I'll give them some shout outs, give some people to listen to. When we come back, we're going to talk about other fights that are happening. We just talked about this month, but there's other fights remaining in 2014 that are worth watching, worth paying pay-per-view fights. I'm not always a big fan of pay-per-view, and I wish the UFC would eventually go down the road where you just get the fights like you do if you subscribe to Nest and you get Red Sox games. I like that aspect of it. It may never get to that. Maybe only title fights are on pay-per-view and things like that, or you pay for the last fight. I don't know how
I think that sometime down the road they could get to that point. I feel like they're still, a few years ago when it was all pay-per-view, that's how they made pretty much all their money. But now they're getting big enough that they can get more money from sponsorships and ticket sales. Obviously they get more expensive with the bigger shows and everything, and they can start to have afford to have more shows at other places. They still have their hub in Las Vegas, obviously. I think that they could get down to the point where they're going to have more and more events on like Fox Sports 1. Now that they've established that that's kind of their network, sort of, like they're having more fight nights there, you could see more bigger events come to just being on TV. Maybe they'll get down to the road where they have the UFC network, like major leagues have now. So I think if you look down maybe 10 years from now, it could change a lot.
It could get there. It's a lot of money in pay-per-view TV. Boxing makes a lot of money.
And people are still paying for it, too. So.
It's not there yet. But there are some fights that are coming up that are on pay-per-view that if you don't have a local Buffalo Wild Wings or someone that are worth buying a card because of these fights, and we'll talk about those in a second.
To get a shot at the title, you have to knock people out.
It's done! Shuts it down!
On Saturday, August 9th, the World Series of Fighting presents WSOF 12. Luis Palomino versus Luis Gonzalez and Ronnie Marks versus Cully Butterfield.
Standing back kick.
Each man looking to stake their claim inside the cage.
Palomino!
It's WSOF 12, live only on the NBC Sports Network.
So that's tonight on NBC Sports Network. That should be fun. I forgot it was a title fight. Again, the smaller promotion title fights is all a lot of times. It's like I said to someone the other day about ECHL hockey. And if you score 70 points in the ECHL, leading scorer, is that something to be happy about? Or is that something to be like, why are you a 70-point scorer at the ECHL and you haven't moved up a level?
Yeah.
Are you the title fight holder of the World Series of Fighting? Why aren't you in the UFC? You could be the title fight, but why are you just title fight of a local promotion or something like that? So sometimes I don't understand, like ECFC here in Lowell they're going to do a title fight here pretty soon. Why do you have a title? Because the person's not going to reign as a title holder for a long time. It is nice to have that, the champion. It's one of those weird things, though.
I feel like they're always vacant, too.
Yeah.
Every local MMA show is like, we're filling the vacant lightweight title. It's like, is every title vacant? Somebody win it and then immediately vacate it? Because every title fight, I feel like, is a vacant title.
And it's true. And it's because a lot of times if you're good enough to win the title, you go to another promoter and something better, you're moving on.
That's true.
So you can have, like, tournament of that night where he was the ECFC 2 champion, but to be the promotions champion is a little weird to me. And that's why the World Series of Fight is a little bit different because you probably do have people who want to fight. Maybe they don't want to go to the UFC, which is kind of weird. But it's like people who play hockey over in Europe instead of playing in the NHL. Sometimes people want to play over in Europe because that's where they want to play in KHL or something like that. Some similar organization that maybe is not as big, but you can still make money. You can still be popular and hold a title and things like that. I don't know, would you as a person want to have a title belt or lose 4 fights in a row at the UFC level, but you be at the UFC level? One of those things that, like, win belts. So that's tonight. It should be pretty good. I mean, I'll probably tune in a little bit, but it's not something that I'll go, yay. It is nice to watch fights like that because sometimes you see some good fights and sometimes you're not going, like, I'm pulling for one guy when you're watching it and you're like, the other guy's winning, you're kind of sad, things like that. When you don't care about either fighter and it's just a good fight, sometimes it's good to watch those. But there are other fights that are coming up. More recently, it's like John Jones, Daniel Cormier, but we'll get to that one in a second. Dillashaw, Brow 2, that could be huge. Greg and I were chatting a little bit about how is this where they end the automatic rematch in the UFC? Like they don't do it hardly ever again. Because if Dillashaw wins this fight, it's just like Weidman versus Silva. He won both fights. Dillashaw versus Brow won the first fight. If he wins the second fight, does that say? There's a lot of things. Tim Sylvia fought Andriaovsky twice in a row and beat him twice in a row. It's like, is it just let them win the championship? What does that say to Brow? Or not Brow, to Dillashaw? He won. He didn't really win. They give you half the belt now. If you beat the second guy the second time, you get the whole belt. It's true though. It's like it's double elimination.
Yeah.
I've always wondered too, like, so what happens? Let's say, let's take that Silva Weidman example. So Weidman beats Silva. They have their rematch. Silva beats Weidman.
Then what do?
Do they do a third one?
No, because
and what happens if they keep going back and forth? These guys fight each other 8 times in a row until one finally wins twice.
Well, Junior Dos Santos and Cain Velasquez fought each other 3 times.
Yeah.
But it's true though. It's like, what happens if Brow does win this fight? Then what it basically says is, Dillashaw, you weren't really the champion. It was a fluke fight. And that's not something that you.
Take the title.
Yeah, correct. Like that's not fair to Dillashaw. Dillashaw was the champion. He beat Brow. He didn't go to a decision. Question at all. He beat Brow. Whether it's you get caught with weird or whatever. You fight for 25 minutes. If you win that fight, you're the champion. And if Rao should get a second chance, let Dillashaw fight someone else, and then allow Barao to come in. So this will be an interesting fight. It's definitely worth watching because I like both these guys. Barao went undefeated for like 100 years, and he's a fun fighter to watch. He's Brazilian, so Brazilian fighters are always fun to watch. That's going to be at UFC 177 in Sacramento on August 30th. That's going to be a good fight.
I think the only thing I want to say about that is with immediate rematches, I think the only way I like to see that is if there's the first fight that they have is like they both go to distance and both of them like gave it their all and like they the fight could have gone either way.
Correct.
If that happens, then I say, okay, you know what, they fight for 3 rounds or they fought for 5 rounds and they both gave it their all. I think I'd like to see them go again, see if somebody can finish it. Like that kind of makes sense. It doesn't make sense with like Anderson Silva and Weidman. Like Weidman knocked him out. Silva got cocky and then he
lost the fight.
He lost the fight. There's no way that like you could say like, oh, Silva gave up a good fight. Like let's see them fight again. Like and then the next one, like Silva breaks his leg. It's like you could say it's like, well, we didn't really get his chance to like fight him back. I can kind of see that. If somebody gets like knocked out though, like I don't see a reason why you should say, hey, let's have them fight again in 3 months. Give the shot to somebody else who's been working their way up.
You say that, and it's true. But when have they not done immediate rematches? When it's been like that, Alexander Gustafsson and John Jones didn't get an automatic rematch.
And I think they probably should.
And it was questionable. I think Gustafsson won that fight. So it's like that should have been one of those ones that gets a rematch, right?
Yep.
He didn't knock him out. He didn't win the fight. He got the decision, and some guy on a table with a card said he won the fight.
And that's what I wonder.
And the same thing with Lawler and
Brown, right?
Hendricks. Right?
Yeah, Lawler and Hendricks.
He didn't get an automatic rematch because of it, and it was not questionable, but it went to distance, and it was
GSP too with that one.
Yeah, GSP and Hendricks. I meant GSP and Hendricks.
Yeah, you were mixing up fights.
They didn't.
Oh, yeah.
But the thing with that is, as soon as the fight was over, GSP says, all right, I think I'm going to step away for a while. If he didn't say that, do you think that they would have?
No.
You don't think they would have?
He said no. He said that's one of the things they've said multiple times. No, they won't get an immediate rematch. Like, if this person beats it, no, they're not going to get an immediate rematch.
Yeah.
It all obviously comes down to I think these are special situations. Anderson Silva was unbeatable. He was the best of the best of the best. And that's the reason why they did that one.
Yeah.
You beat a guy who hadn't lost in like 100 years. So it is special.
Yeah.
But I just think also, as a fight fan, how can you get amped up again for the same fight? I was amped up for the Gustafsson and Jones fight because I think Gustafsson has the opportunity to beat him.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a Swedish sort of huge Gustafsson fan. But I think it just happened to be that sometimes it's going to end. I think this may be the time where they say, you know what? I don't care how the fight ended. We're not going to give it an immediate rematch. Give someone else who's barking out the door.
Yeah.
An opportunity.
I think that's the only way that you can get amped up for the same fight is if you see a matchup like Gustafsson Jones or GSP Hendricks. They both go the distance to give it their all, and there's still something left to be desired. You're just like, both of those guys could have the belt right now. It's like I want to see somebody like say it, put it in their face, and say, you know what, I knocked you out, I submitted you, you gave up, like something like that. They want to see somebody finish it, and we talked about before with. What if it goes 5 rounds? What if there's like, hey, tack on another round, see if they'll fight again? But it gets to that point where it's like somebody's gonna die from this. Like,
exactly.
Then that's the point when they say, okay, give them like 3 months, we'll fight again at UFC, UFC, like the next pay-per-view, you'll be another headliner. Like that kind of, I guess that would sort of make more sense. But that's the only way I can see it being like getting amped up for another match, unless somebody gets knocked out or submitted or something like that, or there's a decision and somebody just beat the other guy down. Then it's like it's hard to get amped up for that. You'd rather see somebody else get a shot at it.
Correct.
One of the things they could do, and I think this would be interesting, is if you have a title fight, say you have your heavyweight title. Well, on the same show, that's your main event. Your co-main event is your number 2 and 3 contender who are fighting for the next shot. They get the winner of whoever wins the title. Mm-hmm. And if you sort of structured it in that way where you have on each show your main event's your title fight, and then your co-main event is your the number 1 contender fight for whoever wins the title fight.
Yeah.
And that sort of keeps a flow going where maybe, okay, if for that Weidman-Silva example, Silva loses the title fight. Well, his next fight could be in that title elimination. Mm-hmm. Now if he loses 2 in a row, okay, well now you go back to the back of the line, you got to start over.
Correct.
But if he loses the title, wins the title eliminator in his next fight, okay, well now you earn another shot at that belt.
It's almost impossible though now with injuries and stuff like that.
That's true too, yeah.
So, but the thing also is there are divisions in weight classes in the UFC that there are the champions and then like a far distance below. Like I'm not really excited to see the I can't even think of it. Not Aldo. I'll look it up. I have it right here. Hold on.
The thing I'm thinking about though is
Demetrius Johnson.
Oh yeah.
I'm not like, who is this guy? You know what I mean? There is a drop off on these things, but there are ones that basically saying in classes that have a lot of contenders, if you automatically rematch, first of all, it says that you didn't really win the fight. Okay, in my opinion. Second of all, it tells you that the guy below us doesn't have the credibility to fight. So what you do is you do champion versus the contender. The contender wins. He fights the next contender, like you were saying. Fights the next contender. That contender, then the champion, the former champion gets that. Even if the champion is lost another fight, it's almost like you almost give him double elimination. Give him another shot at the title and beat it. But the immediate rematch, plus that must be marketing horror up at UFC. Like, oh, we got to promote this fight again. Unless it's Gustafsson. Yeah. Unless it's
or like Son and Silva, their second fight. Yeah. Sonnen was 35 seconds away from beating the unbeatable guy. I mean, that was a huge. Everybody was just couldn't wait for that rematch. But how many of them, like you said, have been?
Well, that's because he was on PED.
Well, that's true. His head didn't grow as much as Overeem's, but I mean, how many drug tests can you fail for?
Yeah.
Okay, moving on from that fight, just so we can move on.
Okay. Yeah.
The next fight that I am absolutely dying to see, and I am a Conor McGregor fan. Like, I am a guy that thinks he's legit. I'm a guy that thinks he's proud of his heritage. I think he's proud of being Irish. I think he trash talks, but I think he backs it up. He's not someone who trash talks like Chael Sonnen, and more recently he trash talked a lot and hasn't backed it up. Mm-hmm. I mean, I wrote an article about a year ago about is he even real? Mm-hmm. Like, is Chael Sonnen even? He was contending for title fights against John Jones. Like, why does Chael Sonnen get a title fight? Because he talks away. And I think people think McGregor's that way. That he'll talk. I mean, if he beats Dustin Poirier at UFC 178, I think he might talk his way into a title fight. There's other people before him that would get that shot, but he may get to the point where, again, an OSP or OSP proof, where he could fill in for an injury.
He'd be close.
And I think he's going to beat Dustin Poirier. I think he is the real deal. I think people don't give him credit because he came up in Irish MMA. Dude, the Cage Warrior Championship over there is a legit organization. I think if you were to like worldwide, I'd put Cage Warriors over there above Bellator. In my opinion, they're brutal.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going in there to get beat up. You're gonna eat some fists, and it's not gonna be a pleasant.
That's a big one. I mean, Conor McGregor could be a topic again for a long time. The Irish card, the Ireland card. I mean, the UFC probably want to do a card in Ireland every month now. That card did so much for them. It was on Fight Pass. How well is that? I mean, that sold Fight Pass subscriptions doubled after that card. Like, what did I miss? And then Dustin Poirier. I mean, it's a 10 versus. I mean, Conor McGregor got moved up to 10 because of his fight win over Diego Sanchez. Was it Diego? No, it was whatever.
I think we lost
Diego Brando.
There you go.
Which I don't think that. I mean, Diego Brando. Done. I know that looked really bad. But moving on to that. Then we're going to touch on John Jones again a little bit more in a second, so we'll skip over that one. But Jose Aldo versus Chad Mendes, too. That's going to be a great fight. That's at 179 in October.
That should be a pretty good match.
Chad Mendes, is he beat Jose Aldo. No, he didn't beat Jose Aldo, did he?
I don't believe.
No, he fought. They fought before. This is the second time, obviously. I think they came close in the last one. I was looking this up before. I sound like an idiot now. No. They fought.
This is what you're looking for.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he got Aldo knocked him out right at the end of the first round.
Yeah, that's what it was. It was like
one or
correct.
2 seconds left of that.
So how the fight ended, if it would have gone for 1 second, would have been better and things like that. So this is going to be very interesting, and it's been one fight we've been waiting for because it's been that fight alone canceled the 176 card. Like,
yeah.
Oh, they're not fighting? Oh, then we're not going to have the card. So that's going to be very interesting. It's going to be a fun fight. It's obviously a title fight, so that's something to look forward to. Both of them have only lost once in their entire career. Jose Aldo does look like he's unbeatable. He's probably one of those guys that if Mendes wins this fight, there may be an automatic rematch for a trilogy fight, kind of like when Cain Velasquez and Junior Dos Santos.
That's true.
It'll be very interesting to see if they even make it there, because it's just the way it works.
It's tough enough when you cancel, like, when you're forced to cancel, like, I mean, like, just a TV, like, fight, like a UFC Fight Night is going to be on TV or something like that, but to cancel a pay-per-view and, like, have all that build-up pushed back, like, it's kind of tough with that.
So second time?
Everybody's been waiting for
Second time. And the first,
probably.
Yeah, the other one was when...
John Jones.
Who backed out of that Jones fight?
John Jones, didn't he?
Well, no, Jones backed out, but who got hurt?
He was.
Was it Belt? I think it was Beach. And because Sonnen said, I'll step in and fight him, and on like 8 days' notice or whatever it was.
John Jones was like, I'm not doing this. So, and then I'm desperately waiting for the return of Cain Velasquez to the Octagon. I mean, supposedly this Latino America Tough series is supposed to be awesome. I'm not a huge fan of champions being coaches. I think that takes you away from the fights. If people want to see title fights, I want to see Cain Velasquez fight. Although, Verdun the only guy at that heavyweight division, or the heavyweight class, that he even be a challenger. Who else would you put in there? Overeem? No. I mean, Overeem looked good in his last fight, but he hasn't looked good. So I think
Silva's close too, but again, Silva's got win.
Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, the heavyweight's one of those divisions that is like kind of like flyweight. It's like it's tough to see like up and comers who are like really itching for that title shot right now.
What about this guy?
Roy Nelson.
I love Roy Nelson.
Me too. I think he's great. And he's lost weight, which is nice. He hates this, by the way. We have the figurine here in our studio. But
he's just holding his stomach.
It doesn't look anything like him. He looks cross-eyed.
It doesn't look a thing.
So, you know what? He hated this figurine so much that he actually paid his own money to get one produced for himself. He sells his own.
Oh, really?
There's a Roy Nelson
funny,
figurine. Actually, if you look at just a quick
break, like his hair blowing in the wind.
Break from what we were talking about. If you look at the figurines I have on the table here,
there's a lot of
Bisping, Condon, like some of these fighters. I mean, I got two John Jones.
Dustin Henderson, Brock Lesnar.
John Jones. This John Jones has a huge head, or that one has a huge head.
Yeah.
I don't know why that one has a huge head. But half of them, I bought them with belts on them. Like GSP had a belt on him.
Yep.
Silva had a belt on him. Henderson had a belt on him.
Yep.
And now I have belts just sitting around because they all lost their titles. I have two John Joneses. They each have a belt. They should probably get like 6 belts. But it's just funny how they thing. And then this guy should have a belt, or had a belt at one point. Condon.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So Cain Velasquez, I can't wait for that fight.
I feel like he hasn't fought forever.
No, it's been a while.
Year.
It's been a year. It'll be a year by the time that hits.
Yes, it will. It was October, I think. That Dos Santos fight was October.
And the only way I could see a champion being a tough coach again is if he is injured. You can't fight.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me.
That's true.
But I just don't know. Plus, I also like the idea of a tough card being the tough champions fight on the card that the rest of the card fights. So I'm like, the title fight or the fight on the end of it is the coach winner thing. The fact that none of these, there may be some people that fight on the prelim card that are on this thing because they're in Mexico, and it may just draw people to do it. So some of the people who lost, who get the secondary fights, they don't get a contract, but they get the fight in the UFC, they might be on this card. But then the UFC 181 in December is Weidman versus Belfort, if that even happens.
If that, because who knows?
Yeah.
There's been a guy, I feel like Vito Belfort has got injured and has had to cancel more fights because of anybody in the history of it. I feel like it always happens.
I can't believe Vito Belfort even fights still. I mean, think about it. Look at the pictures back when he was 19, fighting in the UFC and fighting against guys that are 6, 7, 8 times as big as him. And he still fight, and he's one of those guys that looks younger than he did when he's the male version of Jennifer Aniston. No, but he does. He looks some of these kicks, like the kick to rock hold, and his last kick fight against I can't think of his brain fart right now, but he's got some pretty serious.
Oh, Henderson.
Pretty serious wins, and it's like first when I heard this, I'm like I'm a American boy Weidman fan to the point where he beat the unbeatable.
Yeah.
So you can't knock Chris Weidman.
And you know what the funny thing about that was?
He's a nice guy. I'm looking forward to seeing him fight.
Yeah.
I was originally like, they originally put Belfort against him, and then everything fell apart on that card, and he got moved, and Machida ended up fighting him.
Mm-hmm.
I was not looking forward to seeing Belfort because I was afraid Belfort was going to dethrone the guy who beat Silva. But I don't think he's got it. I think Belfort's going to lose and be a knockout. I think Weidman is just way better.
But I think that the interesting thing with the whole Weidman thing was, but like a while back, I really, really did like Anderson Silva. He was like probably my favorite fighter in the league. Once he started getting like more and more wins, and people like more and more people were saying like, you know, best pound for pound fighter in the world, and started liking him more, he started getting more and more cocky in his fights, and he would do the thing where like, you know, get right up in a guy's face and start going like, you know, drop his hands, just like, you know, you can't beat me, you know, you can't. He was doing that for so long that when Weidman was finally the guy that actually knocked him out, when he was, you know, starting to taunt him, like it was just all those things, like a little bit of satisfaction with it. It's like, you know, finally someone just shut him up after that. Like I actually liked that when it happened. Like I really enjoyed it.
The worst one was that Damian Maia fight.
Oh yeah,
Abu Dhabi or wherever it was. I mean, that he spent 4 rounds dancing like Gumby. I mean, that's what he looked like. I remember saying to him,
frustrated.
Like that's what he looked like. He just was like, you know, flailing around.
Yeah.
He just wasn't doing anything. It was so bad. And I think that was right before the Sonnen fight, where
I think so.
I remember watching that first Sonnen fight, wanting Sonnen to rip his head off. And I was like, someone needs to end this.
Yeah. Because you liked him back in the day, like when like, you know, he makes his UFC debut and finishes fights quickly, like in the first round, I forget who he was fighting with, that famous one where like somebody goes to kick him in the arm, he just grabs his leg and knocks him out, like in midair. Like it's just like.
And then the cover of the UFC Undisputed, where him kicking in the face.
Yeah.
That's like a iconic image in UFC or MMA. It's like, yeah, you want to like Silva, but Weidman just again, something has to do with the fact that nationality. UFC started in the United States. It brought a lot of these foreign martial arts together. So that seeing Weidman as the champion of a round or of a weight class that was led by a Brazilian for a number of years, it's just nice to see that as an American, I see it come back to the United States, like the title of the belt in New York.
Yep.
It's cool to see that, and the whole camp down there believes in him. They don't think he can lose, and the fact that he can go up against the baby of the UFC for the longest time, Vitor Belfort was originally, like, he's the UFC, and he's going to beat him. I just think he's going to beat him.
Yeah.
Another fight that I have on that is OSP versus Ryan Bader. We already talked about that. That's going to be a great fight.
Yep.
I also think that Joe Lozon versus Michael Chase, that's going to be a good fight. An interesting fight that people forget is the number 2 fight is Bigfoot Silva versus Andrei Arlovski. I can't believe it's the main event.
Yeah.
First of all, I'm not for Bigfoot. Bigfoot's the number 4 ranked heavyweight, right? Yeah.
No, always like watching him.
Number 4, and Arlovski's
Brazil.
Arlovski's number 14 ranked, but it's because there's not 15 heavyweights that are able to be ranked.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's why.
Yeah.
Arlovski he's a great fighter. I love watching him. I love that last fight. Maybe not want to watch Arlovski fight again.
Yeah.
He did not look good. He just did not. Both fighters looked awful in that fight against Brendan Schaub. But I just don't. It's for him to get a main event against the number 4 ranked. That's like when he signed a deal with the UFC. You're going to give me some good fights. Like that's what I feel like. Like I've been in the UFC before. I've been in title fights. You're going to give me good fights. I think that's what almost like what he did with his agreement. And I think this fight's going to be good. But Bigfoot's going to dominate him.
Yeah, and it's almost like they're throwing Bigfoot a bone. The fight in Brazil.
That's true.
He's in the main event. It's like, you know what? The hometown thing.
Yeah.
Let's give the big Brazilian guy somebody. We're going to feed him.
We'll give him someone who we can knock out. Like,
yeah.
So
send the people home happy.
That's
yeah,
Fight
crazy.
Night 51 on September 13th. That will be on Fox Sports 1, I believe, and Fox Sports off UFC Fight Pass.
Yeah.
And then my boy, Roy Nelson.
What is going on? Is it even happening?
No, it is happening. So Mark Hines said that he was cut.
He was hungry, and then started a rumor that he was
cut.
Unemployed.
He was unemployed. He didn't say he was cut. He's unemployed. I'm sorry. It just happens. All this stuff. And then he came back. Bloody Elbow put something out about how he said he came back. He was hungry. Like
he missed lunch.
I'm hungry right now.
That
Okay, I ate breakfast. I haven't eaten lunch yet. I'm hungry right now. I'm not posting on Twitter that I lost my job. I don't know about you, but I'm not. That's just so weird. To me, that scary enough as it sounds, on a more serious, it sounds like mental issues to me.
Yeah.
It sounds like there's something not right with him. So yes, this fight may not happen. Okay, here's this: who out there is available to fight Roy Nelson? If they can't do this.
Yeah, really.
No, my opinion is this fight is September 20th. It's a week away. Move Bigfoot to face Roy Nelson, or Roy Nelson to face Bigfoot.
Yeah.
That's what I think. that's a number 9 versus number 4. That's a way better card.
Yeah,
it's a main event
much more interesting
issue, because then you lose the main event in Japan.
But I think it might be easier because they've got a lot of Japanese guys. If I remember on that card,
so
you could move one of those Japanese fighters.
Well, I think the co-headliners is this the Tyrone Woodley versus Dungan Kim? No, that's coming up. That's the Lee versus Bisping.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. That's in China. Yeah.
Yep.
But I don't know the card for me, but I remember I believe that they have got some of their top Japanese guys on that show. I mean that's how they usually would structure it. So
did you make a women's main event? Misha Tate versus Rin Nakai and Naki?
I wouldn't be opposed to it.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it.
Interesting, yeah.
It's a fight night show. It's not a pay-per-view. Because you don't have to worry about drawing
because the only woman ever to have a main event carded in UFC is Ronda Rousey.
That's true. Yeah.
And Misha Tate and Rousey.
Whoever she's
I think that'd be great.
Other, yeah.
Do they hate each other more than DC and John Jones hate each other?
I don't know if it goes that far, but it's back when like
there's only 3 bouts officially on that Japan card already, which is kind of weird. Which has recently been weird. They didn't finalize the bout order in Maine until this week or last week. Yeah, this week.
Yeah.
The card's on Saturday, next Saturday. Like I don't understand that. Like how do you not finalize the order? For them to be September 20th, it's still a little over a month away, but there's only 3 fights in that card. They'll probably be filled with local people because it's cheaper for the UFC to do that, and then you draw the fans in it. So this is a very interesting thing. But if that fight doesn't happen, I would love to see Roy Nelson moved up a week and moved him to Brazil. Although Roy Nelson wants to fight in Japan, you know that. He used to fight over there, didn't he? Probably was in Japan or something. Japan.
Oh, okay, yeah, right.
And that's my last fight that I had in 2011 or 2014 that I really want to see. We talked about a couple that kind of have one fighter that you want to see. Greg and I before, like, I was like, I'd like to see him fight, but who he's fighting against, it's like, it's not going to be a great fight. None of those fights are going to be good fights, in my opinion. There's going to be some random fight that's going to be one of the best fights of the rest of the year.
That always happens, yeah.
Or they're not going to happen because of injuries and things like that. Yeah. I was going to talk about MMA in 2015 a little bit later. We talked a lot about other things instead, but Silva and Nick Diaz is going to be huge.
Oh, obviously.
If it happens. Again, we're banking on it happening. It's like 6 months from now, so it's like you got a lot of time to go between. I'm waiting for this boy right here, Nate Diaz, to return to the octagon. I think he's a more of an a-hole version of Anderson Silva.
That's impossible.
His come at me type move around is great. I mean, he's got no mental militia people who is Ryan Deegan and all the action sports fans that are on. He definitely fits that mold. Him and his brother.
He puts on good fights.
The question I have is this Anderson Silva Nick Diaz fight. Has Nick Diaz actually won anything reputable in the UFC in a long time?
No,
I think it's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. This one seems really weird to me because
marketing.
That's exactly what it is, and it sort of goes again. I mean, I understand. Like we've talked a little about this before. When people like Dana say something, you've got to almost do the opposite. But for so long, he was against, I'm not going to do the sideshow fight, is what he called it.
Yeah.
Which Silva Diaz at this point is a sideshow fight.
Yeah.
James Toney, Randy Couture was a sideshow fight. I mean, he sort of just criticized all these small organizations that would do these types of things. He goes, we're never going to do that because we're the UFC. I'm looking forward to Silva Diaz. I'm going to watch that fight. I think it's going to be great. But let's call it what it is. I mean, it is sort of a sideshow fight.
And we're going to get one of two things, I think. It's going to be, oh my gosh, that's Nick Diaz, former contender in the welterweight division. He's going to fight at middleweight, so that's a little bit different too. Anderson's the best of all time. It's going to be great. Or we're going to see these guys obviously have been laid off for a while. You know what I mean? Like, or you're going to see these. You're going to go 5 rounds, and after the 3rd round, they're all going to be swinging and missing. It's going to be this sad fight to say, you know what, this is built up to be this great fight.
Yeah.
And it's nothing.
I think it has.
There is a lot riding on it.
I think it has more potential to be
that. Yeah.
To be just a major disappointment.
Yeah, unfortunately.
The biggest fight of the next 12 months is coming up on September 27th. John Jones versus Daniel Cormier. Not because it's, and I'll give you my prediction right now. John Jones is going to win the fight. I don't think Daniel Cormier is going to be able to fight John Jones. Could any injury be more in the UFC's favor than Alexander Gustafsson getting injured? Honestly, has there been more hype? The most views that we've got on the MMA section of our MillCitySports.com has been based on John Jones and Daniel Cormier. This fight is huge. And if you didn't know what happened at UFC 178 Media Day, we're going to play a clip from Fox Sports 1 when they did an interview with just John Jones' description, because I didn't want to go 18 minutes of the whole clip.
Yeah.
This is just John Jones with Kenny Florian, his description of what happened at UFC 178 Media Day in Las Vegas.
Welcome back to Fox Sports Live. I'm Kenny Florian here with UFC light heavyweight champ John Jones and Daniel Cormier. As you just saw, things got heated between these two at a media event in Las Vegas Monday morning to promote UFC 178. They have since flown to LA for this interview, but were asked to be separated. John's with me. Daniel's upstairs in our newsroom. So here we are. John, let's start with you. You two have been going back and forth for a little while. Things have finally boiled over. What happened between you two? How did things get so crazy?
You know what? Before I even get into the story, I want to start by apologizing to quite a few people. I want to apologize to MGM Grand Casino. I want to apologize to the fans at home who had to see that. I want to apologize to Dana and Lorenzo Fertitta. Basically, what happened was, we were at the press conference earlier. Conor McGregor and his opponent, they get in each other's face, pretty close to each other, pretty heated. Right. The atmosphere in the room was just pretty thick. I looked over at Cormier, and I could tell by his face that he felt, he was feeling it emotionally. So I knew it was going to be a heated stare down. Right away, me and Daniel, we meet in the middle of the octagon, and no one stopped. Usually there's a little distance between fighters. I walked right up on him. He walked right up on me. I put my chin down, and our faces touched at that moment, which happens all the time. I mean, Chris Weidman and Anderson Silva darn near kissed, you know what I mean? Right. So it happens all the time. I just figured it was going to be a great photo op. It was going to get the fans really excited. I did not expect to get hit in the throat. When I got hit in the throat right away, I reacted off of sheer instinct.
So that was John Jones. We didn't get Daniel Cormier's response to that whole thing, but that was a day after or the night. No, actually, it was the night, because it was Las Vegas and they flew to Los Angeles. So that was the night of the media day, which was Tuesday.
Yeah, I think it was
Tuesday.
Tuesday. Yeah, I think you're right.
So Tuesday was the media day. By the way, tickets went on sale for that on Friday. So if you're in that area and you want to go to see this fight in Las Vegas, you should go see it or buy your pay-per-view or whatever, because this is going to be thing. But I have something to say on that in a second. But so Daniel Cormier stood his head, or they got close. They usually stop. They got close, touched heads. Daniel Cormier did what I don't even know why he did it. He punched him in the throat, pushed him back in the throat, and it should have been broken up. And then John Jones swung at him, and they come flying over the thing. There's some great memes out there. What's his name? The PR guy for the UFC, oh my gosh, Dana said just do the stare down. You'll be fine. Just do the stare down.
That poor guy thought he was going
to God, yeah. Oh, absolutely. And then, so Daniel Cormier, they get in a little tussle. They tear down the backdrop. It's awful. And then, 2 days later, 3 days later, 4 days later, they go on ESPN. And they're doing an interview on SportsCenter, and the camera's still rolling, but they're not on live TV, and they call each other names. John Jones threatens to kill him, literally, and first off, Daniel Cormier is no, I'll take you down. No. I meant if you spit in my face, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to murder you. And it's holy crap. So if anybody out there thought that the brawl at the media day was mid-publicity stunt to get this whole rivalry even higher, there's no way this could be, because they had no idea the cameras were rolling. And But at the end of the fight, they shake each other's hands, they give each other hugs. Guaranteed.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
Because you know what? They just try to get each other riled up, and they try to fight each other. Just like Nick Diaz and GSP shook hands. Just like all these other people shook hands after fights, other than Ronda Rousey and Miesha Tate. That's different. But
yeah, as it goes to a different rivalry.
It's a crazy, crazy, crazy thing. Mike, Greg, is this bad or good? Both the brawl and the trash talk. Start with the brawl, because the trash talk came after that, and then when I thought about talking about this today, I thought about just the brawl. Is the brawl bad for mixed martial arts, the UFC? Is it good? Is it indifferent? What do you think, Mike?
I don't think it's bad. I'm not sure it's definitely good, because I'm not sure mainstream people are gonna look at that and take it seriously. But I don't think it's bad. I don't think it hurts them. I don't think it's going to hurt attendance or how many people buy this fight on pay-per-view. I think it might actually help sell the fight.
Correct.
People are going to be now more interested. More people know about this fight from the casual fan perspective than they did a week ago right now, because of what happened. So it can only help in that regard. I think where it does hurt a little bit is the mainstream people that haven't accepted it yet.
The state of New York's going, I told you we shouldn't regulate it.
Yeah, they're going to roll their eyes, which is funny to me, because this stuff has happened in boxing
all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just watching a clip of this the other day. Mike Tyson and Lennox Lewis had to have police cut off the ring from each other during introductions before they fought because they were afraid that there was going to be some giant brawl. I mean, it's a lot of it's theatrics and a lot of it is trying to sell it being bigger than it is. But I think the people that it is going to turn off, it shouldn't. It's just sort of it's people that are going to roll their eyes anyway. So who really cares about them? If you're the UFC, I don't think it hurts at all.
No. Do you think any differently?
I think no. I'm sort of agreeing. I do see the argument on both sides of saying how it could hurt or how it could improve it. I think it's going like Mike said. I think it's going to be more good than bad overall for them because I think it's brought so much more attention. Because honestly, like even myself, like I was getting my hopes up to see Jones and Gustafsson fighting again so much that like when they throw in Daniel Cormier in there, it's like like I'm less interested in the fight. Then things like this happen, and it's like you start to get a little bit more excited for it to see that kind of fight. Now it's one of the most anticipated fights of the rest of the year, and everybody wants to see it happen. I think that certainly helped it. I understand Dana White's approach to all that. Like he doesn't like to see like things like that when things get out of control, and like it tends to seem like it's more of a pro wrestling type of thing where they're just like yakking at each other behind the scenes and all that stuff. But
part of that has to do with the fact that they're fighters. They literally punch each other for a living. So if this was like Sidney Crosby and Alexander Ovechkin doing a stare down for the cover, no, seriously, for a cover of something, and they did this, they'd say, oh well, they got into a little thing. These people potentially could kill people with their weapons they have, and people have defended themselves. People who train mixed martial arts and things like that defend themselves doing jiu-jitsu and different moves, breaking into their home, breaking it up. So it's like one of those scary things that if there wasn't all those people there, what would have happened? Yeah. They won't have gloves on. It would have been. It's UFC 1 again. It's like it's crazy. But I'm going to bring you the excitement and the anticipation of this fight from way up high and bring it way down low because one of these two is getting injured before September 27th. It's just the way it's happened more lately. John Jones has the cut. Not that he'll use it as an excuse, but I feel like it's going to get to that point. And you want to know why it's going to get to that point? Because the UFC is going to be able to use it for a long period of time.
I see your point.
You know what I mean? Like it's going to be moved to December or January or the whatever, and it's going to be moved. It's still going to happen, but one of them is going to get injured, and they're going to delay the fight, and they're going to be able to use this